My name is Erica Brooks, and I am going to be co-facilitating the session with Mary. I am a field organizer for the Southern region for Central Valley Movement Building Organizing Institute. I cover Tulare, Fresno, Kings, and Kern County.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mary Aguirre. I am the Native Field Organizer with Central Valley Movement Building Organizing Institute, and I cover the northern area of the Central Valley. This includes South Sacramento, San Joaquin and Stanislaus counties. Thank you.
If you can help us with the next slide, thank you. So tonight we're here because we are excited to be part of the National Week of Action. There in your screen, you can see National Week of Action is happening next week from October 18 to the 26th, as well as the statewide Dignity in School campaign. They're part of the National Week of Action, and we are part of Central Valley Movement Building. And the organizations that you see below there, Dolores Huerta Foundation, Black Parallel School Board, the Collective for Liberatory Lawyering, and the Central Valley Movement Building Organizing Institute that are hosting this training this evening. Next slide. And if you don't know who Central Valley Movement Building is and the Organizing Institute, we are a community-based organization empowering marginalized communities to become leaders. Our organizing approach is rooted in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and Ella Baker model of grassroots organizing, which emphasize decentralization, community engagement, and leadership development. Our purpose is the dismantling the school to prison pipeline, and we know that doesn't happen overnight, right? This requires leaders working together, parents and youth, to replace and advocate for replacing school practices that are punitive to practices that restore justice. And how do we do this? We do this by providing training and resources to local organizers and local organizations, building their capacity, and supporting the local community, parents, youth, and members in movement building work. The Institute seeks to build a strong and sustainable movement for social justice in the Valley. Some of the things that we do is like what we're doing tonight, political education. We do education training that empowers community members to become active participants in grassroots movement building. We build community by working together and with community members who share a common goal and work together towards achieving that common goal. And we also try to build power, right, by engaging these community members and sharing the knowledge, building their skills to become active leaders in their own communities and finding their power. Next slide. And tonight, this evening, we're excited to share with you the first of our series is Empowerment in Education, talking about your rights as a parent, as a guardian. And here we'll be sharing a toolkit that Central Valley Movement Building Organizing Institute created along with the Collective for Liberatory Lawyering. And I'm going to go through some of the information that is part of the toolkit. You can access the toolkit by visiting the link that will be shared in the chat later. This information is available in English and Spanish, so you can have access to that. So one of the things that we wanted to talk first in our series was about sharing with parents their rights and guardians too, right? So the first one is that we wanted to share. It's six points that we're going to be covering along with kind of like an overview, brief overview of special education as well. So first, any decision that a school makes about your students' education must be supported by California law. So if you are worried about a choice the school is making, like suspending, transferring, or switching the classes of your student, ask the school staff to print and explain the state law or the district policy that allows that change to happen. So usually when we work with parents and we advise parents to ask for that in writing, or if they go to the school to ask one of the staff, can you please show me what part of the California law or what part of the district policy has this particular change that we're trying to do in writing. The second one is that you have a right to be informed about what is happening with your students' education. So one example would be you have a right to visit your kids' classroom. Sometimes parents have to request this in advance with times, and as well as if parents don't speak the language. So let's say that we're talking about a Spanish speaker, for example, they have to request translated documents and or interpreted at the school meeting. And you also have a right to have somebody to support or go with you to this meeting, so an advocate is in the community. You also have a right to review the school decisions before signing everything or anything that the school gave you. So this is important because we have many cases where parents feel pushed to sign documents right there in the school because the staff is asking them to sign them right there. But you have a right to not do that. You have a right to take that document with you and kind of like take it back and review what the document you're trying to sign. And you also can share that document with a trusted person in your community or another community advocate to help you guide you through that process. Next slide, please. Another thing that we have been hearing in community too is parents are called and asked to pick up their kids from school. So you do not have to pick your student from school unless they are formally being suspended. So if the school asks you to pick up your students, but they don't give you a written notice or suspension notice, it's more likely to be an illegal suspension and your student has a right to remain in school. So of course, we always ask parents to use discretion on this. If they feel that their kid is not safe in school, please use that discretion to evaluate. But the school cannot ask you to pick up your student from school if they don't have if they're not formally being suspended. You also have a right to a hearing if your student is recommended for expulsion. You can review the evidence against your child and bring any support person, a friend, or a community advocate to help you and question the school staff about that evidence. Your child is not required to attend that hearing. In many cases, some parents bring their kids to the hearing. We recommend to not do that, and if you have, we will be sharing some of our contacts later. Us as a community advocate to go with you. It's always better, even if you know all these rights and you think that you can exercise as a parent. I can tell you, it's always good to have somebody else with you to help you navigate this. You also have a right to know what other ways the school has tried to address your students' behavior before suspending or expelling, unless the student is suspended for one of the zero tolerance offenses that you can see here on the slide, like possessing or selling or furnishing a firearm, brandishing a knife to another person, possession of explosive, committing or attempting to commit a sexual assault, or selling or otherwise furnishing controls. These are the only cases where the school district can recommend an expulsion. Other than that, the school has to provide evidence of other means of correction had been used with your student in order to recommend an expulsion. And we'll talk a little more, and Mary will talk a little more about the IEP process. But if your child has an IEP, they have important rights too. So if your student is facing unfair punishment, you should request an immediate IEP meeting to discuss more appropriate intervention. And if you doesn't have an IEP, but you suspect they have a disability or need more support, you have a right to ask for that. And like I said, my colleague here, Mary, will share more about that. But before we go into the IEP process, I want to advise you, and this is an important note here, all of these are rights, and knowing your rights is one thing, but exercising them is another. So you know your school, you know your community, you know your kid, and you are the only person that knows when and how to assert these rights. So please use caution and think about this process. But like I said, the toolkit will be shared in the chat. This is a resource available for community, and if you're ever in one of our in-persons, we have it in this little pocket too that you can put in your purse and take with you. We have this, so if you need some of these I guess the paper, let us know in the chat. And I will pass to my colleague Mary to talk a little more about the IEP process.
All right. Thank you, Erica. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to be going over the disability rights, and where I'm looking to start at is understanding the IDEA Act. So first off, what is IDEA? So IDEA is a federal law that ensures children with disabilities that they have a right to a free, appropriate public education. So it was first passed in 1975 as the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, and then later renamed. So what this sets in place is that all children have a right to be in the classroom and have the same rights as having that education as every child in their classroom. Okay, so the key principles of IDEA is the free, appropriate public education. So the schools must provide education at no cost to families and meet the child's unique needs. And we know this for public education. What Erica touched on is the individual education program, the IEP. So this is a written plan developed by a team, including parents, that these set goals and services for your child. This is part of the IDEA. They also have a right to be in the least restrictive environment. So children with disabilities should learn alongside peers with disabilities as much as possible. Parent participation. Parents are always equal partners in decision making, always. Don't ever be afraid to speak up for your child. They have just as right as anybody else in their classroom to have these things for them. Sorry. So procedural safeguards, legal protections that ensure fairness and give parents the right to challenge school decisions. Next slide. Thank you. So going over California specific rules, California allows IDEA, but also has its own education code that adds detail. For example, schools must complete evaluations within 16 calendar days of a parent's written request. So when you request like an assessment or evaluation in writing, they have 60 days to turn this around. IEP meetings must be held at least once a year to review progress. Parents can request an independent education evaluation at public expense. So if you disagree with what the school has done during their evaluation, or if they deny you an IEP, you have the right to request the independent education evaluation at their expense. So they'll bring somebody in from an outside source to come in and do the evaluations for you. So why does this matter for parents? IDEA is not a guideline, it's federal law. Schools that receive federal funding must comply. Parents have the right to request evaluations in writing, be fully informed of decisions, use mediation or due process if disagreements arise. So the key takeaways is that this is a cornerstone of special education law in the US, in California. So it guarantees your child's right to service, supports, and fair treatment. I just wanted to go over this as the basis to kind of understand what the law is, and then we'll go into looking at IEPs. Next slide. Okay. So a lot of parents, it's a very, very confusing process. And so what I've seen in the community is it gets confusing, and like, where do we start? How do we start this process? So first and foremost is requesting an assessment. So submit a written request to the school for an evaluation. So it's really important to have this request in writing, like I had mentioned, because it's going to be an official. So you can either do it through email or do a written request and turn it into the office. I know sometimes we go directly to the teachers or to a counselor and we talk to them and let them know, like, we want an assessment for our child. And they'll respond and say, okay, but that's not really an official request. So we want to make sure that it's in writing. So as soon as you put this in writing, they have 15 days to respond with an assessment plan. So always document what, when you've turned in your your request for an assessment, document the day so that you can start counting down, that they will have the 15-day time limit for the assessment plan. So this next step would be the assessment. So after you sign the consent, which within those 15 days, they will send you some documents. And this is going to talk about the assessment that they plan on doing. So they'll talk about, they'll have like a school psychologist come in, they'll talk with a counselor, and they'll start doing their evaluations to see where your child sits and what kind of assessment they'll be able, and what if they're eligible for support. So once they give you this document, it's important to sign it because that's what's going to start the process. So once you sign that and get it turned back into the school, they have 60 days to finish the evaluation. So during the 60 days, like I said, they will be doing the evaluations in school. They'll bring people in to do the assessments. And then after those 60 days, and it might not take the full 60 days, but they have 60 days, they'll hold an IEP meeting. So during this time, I really recommend that you keep all records that you have, or find everything that you can to bring to an IEP meeting so you can state the kinds of things that are happening, your child's strengths, where they struggle, report cards, or any other supporting documents that you feel that's going to be needed during this time. So once you get all of that together, you're going to have your IEP meeting. So this is determining eligibility. So once the IEP team meets and you'll be in this meeting, they get to review the assessment with you. And so they have to do this within 30 days. So after, they've done the assessment and the assessment's done, they have 30 days to get you in and do an IEP meeting. After their evaluation, to decide eligibility, and they'll let you know if you're eligible, an IEP will be created. So this is when you get to sit down and do an official IEP meeting, and they will put, the accommodations, the supports, if you're going to have speech therapy, if you're going to need more, if your child's going to need more time on tests, and you'll be able to go through that. I would look up and kind of see what kind of accommodations that are normally given for children. So if not, like we talked about, if the IEP is not, if they're not eligible, you can request a 504 plan or an independent education evaluation. And like we talked about, that will just be bringing in somebody else from the outside to do the evaluation. 504 plan and IEP can be interchanged, and a lot of people it's a little bit confusing. So we'll go over the differences in the next slide. So sorry, I have one more left. Thank you. So the last is the implementation and review of the IEP. So as soon as you get the IEP, services will begin immediately. So everything that you've agreed upon and you sign, the plan will be reviewed every year to update the goals and supports. And a full evaluation will be conducted at least every 3 years. So as Erica had mentioned, you do not have to sign the IEP if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't understand. A lot of times it's very confusing. You can take it home, you can read it over, you can ask somebody that may, understand it. You can research whatever you need to do. You can add things if you need to, if you feel like, okay, after the meeting, we put these, I forgot to put this in. You can do all of that and you do not have to sign. They may make you feel like it needs to be, but it's your right to not sign it. So if at any time this might be like a yearly review or like a 30-day meeting, if you don't sign, you can still have what is already there. So if you already have an IEP, that will still be in place. You don't have to worry about nothing. There won't be any gaps. You'll be totally fine. Okay, next slide. All right, so looking at the IEP versus a 504 and what the differences are between the two. So as we talked about the IEP, the law behind it, and the idea, if we look at the 504, so this is based on the 504, the Rehabilitation Act. So the purpose of an IEP is designed to provide special education and individualized support. We'll look at the eligibility for a 504. So for a 504, you must have a disability that impacts educational performances and requirements. And if you look at the eligibility for an IEP, it's pretty much the same. Now, what's the difference is there's going to be a diagnosis in there. So services included with a 504. So this is where they offer accommodations like extended time on tests, preferential seating, breaks, health plans, or access to devices. So if students will say, if there's a time of the day when you know that your child is usually needs a break, and maybe it's after lunch, and the teacher notices that maybe he or she is overwhelmed, and it's in like a 504, an accommodation, instead of him getting in trouble for walking out of the class, you can input that into a 504. So that way she knows, okay, we know that he's going to be outside for, 5 minutes, calming down or just catching his breath, and then he'll be back in. So those types of accommodations can definitely be put in if you need a separate area to take tests, because, sometimes classes can be very loud. Anything that you feel like it's going to be beneficial for your child, you can include in a 504. So if we look at an IEP when we are meeting with the team, so with the team included in the IEP, there's going to be parents, general and special education teachers, a school psychologist, and other specialists. If we're doing a 504, so this typically includes a parent, special education teachers, and the school staff. So there are fewer specialists involved because the 504 doesn't include, like, we'll say speech therapy or any kind of special support plans with that. So with an IEP, there is going to be a written plan. So it's a detailed document with measurable goals, services, and progress and monitoring. So there are goals that are set in place at this school. The teachers have to attain, and it'll be monitored and look at where the child is progressing. And if not, then it could be adjusted and looked at what we can do to move on. And so with a 504, it's not really set in stone as much as, like, we'll say an IEP, but they can review and you can add at any time. If you feel like you need to add anything to an IEP, you definitely can, like, send in a request, and with your written request, everything has to be done within 30 days. Okay, next slide. All right, so looking at your roles as a parent. So parent roles is, we want to be able to advocate and speak up for our child's needs and goals. We're collaborators, so we're working with the teachers and the specialists to shape the IEP. Like I mentioned before, you know your children the best out of anybody. So you know what things they need, what kinds of accommodations they may need. So it's important that you are a collaborator, because you're going to be able to give the best advice. You're also an observer. So monitor progress and share insights from home. Sometimes they may be seeing different goals that aren't attained, and you're seeing different things happening at home. So it's important to collaborate with them. You're also a decision maker. So you get to help choose services, accommodations, and placements that you feel are going to be best for your child. You're also a supporter. So reinforcing learning strategies and goals outside of school is also going to help. So the parents' rights, which we talked about, you are an equal team member. Parents are legally part of the IEP team and must be included in all decisions. So this is very, very important. You are an equal partner of the IEP team, just like the school counselor, just like the teacher, the principal. You are equally important. So you have a right to participate. You attend and contribute to all meetings about any evaluations, any placements, and services. You have the right to consent. So you must give written permit, or I'm sorry, must be given written permission before evaluations or services begin. So if they feel that there's any need, any changes that need to be done, they have to get written permission. So you have to sign something. They can't just change something if they feel something needs to be adjusted on an IEP. You also have access to records, so you can review all educational documents and request corrections. You also have access to behavioral records. So if you ever feel like maybe anything has been put on your child's records and you would like to look, you have the right to request all of those. You have the right to disagree. So you can request a mediation, file complaints, or initiate a due process hearing. So anytime that you feel like they're not hearing you, you definitely have the right to mediation. So speak up and advocate for yourself. You have the right to request an IEE, which we spoke about before. This is the independent education evaluation. So again, if they disagree with school assessments, or they're not hearing you and you feel like you need something else, definitely this is also an option. Next slide. Okay. So what happens when you feel like your rights have been violated? So first off, you have the right to file a complaint. So I would start with addressing concerns directly with the school leadership, like the principal, school counselor, and talk to them and let them know what's going on. Talk to the teacher. Usually, some of these issues can be resolved if they're working well with you. So these are the first formal steps. Keep detailed notes of dates, names, what was said, what was done. of copies of emails, letters, meeting notes. So you want to make sure that you document everything. So documentation is going to be your strongest evidence, because although we feel like things should be done in the right way, it's really on us to really bring that evidence to them, especially if we're, filing complaint or talking about any issues that are happening. What I would advise too, because sometimes the school will call you, the best way is to try to do like emails, that way you always have evidence. But if sometimes they call you, what I advise is sending an email after your call and just letting them know, like, per our conversation, this is what we talked about. And so that there's like a paper trail for you. Okay. So if the school fails to follow special education law, submit a written complaint to the California Department of Education. So once you put in a written complaint, they must investigate your complaint and respond within 60 days. Yeah, just always, even stuff that you don't think is going to be important, keep it. Anything that, that the teachers have said, counselors have said, principals have said, any kind of homework you feel that they're struggling on, and, report cards, especially, those kinds of things are important to keep on hand. Next slide. So we will also be including a toolkit. So this is an IEP toolkit that Vanessa will be dropping in the chat. And what this toolkit includes, so it's going to be what we talked about, like, where do you start? It'll give you the names of people that are usually a part of the school that you can, when you do this written request for an IEP, it'll tell you who are you going to address this, this letter to. It'll go to like a principal, school psychologist, everybody that you should include. It depends. Each school is different, and some people might not have a school psychologist. They might have a counselor. So it depends on who your school has. But it'll give you a kind of a guide on what to do. It includes letters. So an example of a letter, you can use the letter, you can change wording, but it'll kind of give you a basis of what you're able to use. Also a checklist of when you go into an IEP meeting, what kinds of things that you want to take with you, what kinds of things that that you need to bring with you, and the things that you'll do during the meeting, any questions you want to ask, anything that you want to look at after the meeting, how do you follow up after a meeting, and also keeping track. There will be a tracker that you can fill in, and it talks about, like, you'll be able to, like, when did you send in your written request? You put the date, and it'll just kind of be a timeline where you can fill in all those and basically keep your own documentation. We have a decoder on there, and like I talked about earlier, is a lot of times there's like acronyms or key terms that they'll use, and it's very confusing and very hard to understand. We're not used to hearing a lot of these terms. So there is a decoder on there that'll talk about what those acronyms mean, so that we can, just look at everything. And so I thank you guys for being a part of this tonight. It was really exciting to put this together for everybody. We'll talk about the next things that are coming up for us. We are really, really, really excited. And we have some billboards that are in some communities where you'll see us. We have a billboard in Stockton and Bakersfield and Fresno. And so if you see them, we do, you take a picture, tag us on social media. This is something really exciting that we are very proud of. And so I will turn it over to Erica to talk about our upcoming events.
Thank you, Mary. And yes, we are excited. It has been a long work in process to be able to see the billboards, and the message is clear. Parents are watching. We want safe schools and redefine what safe schools means, right? We're talking about restorative practices. So yeah, we have them in Stockton, Bakersfield, and Fresno, and we are very excited. If you are near Fresno, next week, we're gonna have a film screening followed by a panel discussion of the preschool to prison. It's gonna. We are doing this event in collaboration with Fresno City College. We appreciate that partnership. We will be sharing the link in the chat to register to that event. We'll have the event is Wednesday, October 22nd from 5:30 to 8. We have some dinner will be provided too, but more than that is to have an opportunity to bring this important topic to the community, right? To continue on the conversation about why we mean by safe schools, why are safe schools important, and parents being active participants and members and always watching and advocating. We will continue this series next Tuesday from 6 to 7. Our next session is going to be more about how do we move from, or little like, or advocacy as individuals, and how do we push for movement building and as community. So we are excited that you are here, and please share with others these areas. I think that the registration link might still be up. If you have, I guess, any questions about the presentation, we will have this presentation in Spanish too in a later date. We'll be doing the exact same presentation in Spanish for our Spanish speaking audience. I think the next slide is gonna be see if you have any questions.
Please feel free to unmute yourself if you do have any questions, or you can drop them in the chat and we can definitely read them out loud. Thank you.
No questions, just feedback. You ladies did a great job, and I really enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you.
1 second. We did have a question in the chat. Miss Naomi asks, can anyone join the Zoom next week?
Absolutely. This education series is open to the community. So like that's what we share. Please share with community members.